Welcome back to another episode of the Wild Edible World podcast, where today you're going to find us with yellow fingers and milky stems. As weird as that sounds, we promise you it's normal, and you're going to find out why later on in this episode. I'm Michael, also known as the Dandy King.
And I am Steve, the Lord of Lions, and welcome to the Dandelion episode.
Yeah, we're coming at you from the field today with this one, folks.
Yeah, we are sitting at a picnic table at a trailhead in a park here in Illinois. And around us we have trees and birds and nature, and we stepped through a puddle earlier, so wet feet as well.
Yeah, man. Bring it on. It's got a nice breeze flowing through, too, so let us know what you think the sound is. We think it's going to be pretty great. But yeah, we're talking about dandelions today, and we walked through a whole field of them, kicking up the flowers, kicking up the seeds and everything. They're kind of blowing past us as we sit here, too.
Doing the Lord's work.
Doing the Lord's work. So yeah, let's just start off with talking a little bit about the scientific binomial and a little bit of the plant's history. So the binomial is Taraxacum officinale, and the etymology of it is it used to be called dens lions, or dandelion is why where we get dens lions from, and that actually is because of the lion's teeth. And it's supposedly they thought that the edges of the flower looked like lion's teeth. So, I mean, that's kind of an interesting fact, how people throughout history have viewed different things in nature, like stars and flowers. You know, it's kind of interesting to see the poeticism through that.
And it's such a fascinating plant because, to our advantage, the whole thing is edible. The whole darn thing.
Yeah. Yep, root to flower, even the seeds, it's incredible. And that's actually why it grows so prolifically here. It was brought over to America from Europe and Asia as a food crop. So there's this whole history of love for this plant that has just been completely lost. In fact, there's tons of history of it being eaten in Greece and Italy that is, of written record. And there's actually tons of wild plants and a whole wild plant culture going on over there that is kind of underestimated here. And there's just a beautiful butterfly floating right past us, folks.
Yeah,
a monarch.
This is awesome.
The state butterfly.
That's right.
So it was brought to North America by European colonizers as food and medicine crop. Long history of use in Europe. It's now actually naturalized in every single continent except Antarctica.
Yeah.
So
food for us and food for the honeybees.
Yeah, and it's not just it's not qualified as an invasive technically either. It's been around so long that it's considered naturalized in all these places.
Yeah.
So the people and the animals around have learned to use it and benefit from it, which is really cool.
It's such a beneficial crop because it's often the first thing that blooms, the first thing that shows up, and that's why they brought it to kind of support that honeybee population. The honeybees need food too, so those dandelions that pop up early sustain them, and then us as well.
Yeah, yep, super densely nutritious plant. So let's talk about what it looks like to start with. So we'll start with the most recognizable feature, and that is, in our opinion, the flower. It's just this bright golden beacon that you can see from hundreds of feet away, and it just is a really delightful thing to see, especially early on in the spring, whenever things are still kind of brown, not quite green yet, and then you just have this.
You get little suns in your yard.
Yes, exactly.
Hopefully in your yard. Don't use
rays
pesticides.
of sunshine.
Don't use pesticides.
No, don't. No pesticides. So yeah, and then going down from the flower, it sits on this long kind of reddish colored stem, and which emits this milky substance whenever you break it, which is kind of why we brought up the milky stems in our intro. So yellow fingers, because actually the flower itself can stain really easily. I remember as a kid, we used to rub it on our cheeks to give ourselves yellow cheeks or whatever, doing what kids do.
Do you think it's ever been used as a food or a clothing dye or anything? Because it rubs off pretty easily. I wonder if you were to try to extract that somehow.
Yeah, I imagine.
To look into.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it probably wouldn't be that strong of a dye, but if you wanted to make something just kind of yellowish or tannish, I imagine it would totally work. And the flower is also really delicious as a tea. It's my favorite part of the plant, personally.
We've all seen you on Instagram chowing down on handfuls of dandelion.
Yep, that's where I get the name.
You crazy guy.
Yep. No, the flower is definitely the best part. And so down from the stem, we have this what is referred to as a basal rosette, And so that means it's got this kind of blooming pattern to it. So you have all these leaves that come out from a center point. And so each plant can carry about, I think grows 7 to 10 heads each plant, maybe 5 to 7 heads. Obviously, I've seen a lot of, this is one of those plants that kind of like really varies in its appearance. You know, some of them are really big, some of them are really small. Some of them have 3 flower heads. Some of them have 10 flower heads. I mean, they're just all over the place.
I have one growing on the side of my house right now that has, no joke, 14-inch leaves.
Wow.
It's just huge. And I was like, should I save some seed and try to see if it grows another giant one, or is it random, you know?
It actually is kind of mostly based on the environmental situation that it's in. So if it doesn't have much competition, it's going to grow really big and it's going to grow out. As opposed to if it has a little bit of competition and you're going to have it be tighter and taller.
So this guy is sprouting from the cracks between my driveway and the mulch on the side of my house. So he's just an overachiever.
Yeah, that to me indicates a little bit of stress. So it's stretching up really tall.
Yeah. And it is. Even the actual flower stem itself is like probably close to 2 feet.
Yeah.
Like, it's huge.
Yeah, I walked by one at a local park that was at least 3 feet tall. Like I was standing next to it and it was above my hip from the ground. It was just, they just get so insanely tall, which is another really cool part of it because you're just growing a lot more food on one plant.
Sure. I just took a bite of that stem right now. And, you know, of course I've had them before, but never like just on its own, you know.
Sure.
Normally I'm chewing on them with you, with the flower as well. The flower is really sweet. The stem has just a delicious flavor. Like I could chop that up and use that in place of like, you know, if I wanted something less aggressive than like a green onion or something along those lines.
Oh yeah.
Or like to pickle or something.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So the stems are completely hollow, so they also can serve as like a straw. They're also known to be used for fiber. Excuse me, I believe. So back down to the basal rosette, we're gonna take a look at these stems or these leaves here, and they kind of start out red at the base, and then as they elongate, they have this tooth pattern to them, but just one stem through the middle of it. So it's got this tooth pattern to it, and is this your favorite part of the plant?
This is absolutely my favorite part. So I feel we were talking about this a little bit. So I feel like it's like lettuce and arugula had a baby. If you can find them young, so if you can find a small plant that's just sprouted, you know, in its first year of infancy, probably, those greens are just great. And as the plant gets bigger, of course, they're going to be tougher. Might need a little bit of cooking, but if you can find a young plant, just in addition to a salad, or even you know, toss in olive oil, salt, pepper, maybe a little bit of mustard, and put on top of a sandwich or something.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like they're just so good.
Yeah, I've seen recipes where and I've done it myself actually, where you take the crown of the plant, so that's just everything above the ground, you cut it off from the root, and then you have this basal rosette with lots of leaves and some of these potentially little flower buds on there, which are also exceptionally tasty.
Sure.
And then you just batter them and fry them whole, and it's kind of like a vegan calamari type deal where they look like little octopus or whatever, but you have this nice little tempura vegetable.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's one of the great ways to use these young plants.
And I think I've seen you do that before. I think I've seen that on your social media or
delicious
along those lines. Pretty sure I have. Just because I was like, wow, I didn't know you could do. You know, I never thought to use it like that.
Yeah,
rather.
Absolutely.
And then from there?
So moving down from, the above ground to the below ground, you have the taproot. We don't have any of this in front of us, but, a taproot basically kind of describes the same thing, where you have this single root that goes straight down. It will have a few offshoots, but that's also an edible vegetable as well. So the whole plant, top to bottom, is edible raw, and some people prefer to use the root itself cooked. There's a variety of ways that you can treat it. A lot of people like to talk about dandelion coffee, dandelion root coffee.
That's the biggest one I've seen.
Yeah, it is probably the most popular use of that part of the plant, and to me that's kind of debatable on whether it actually tastes like coffee or not. Sometimes it does. It depends on like the type of roasts you prefer or what you expect to be coffee. I think it's kind of more best used as a filler in coffee that you already have, or mixed with something else like chicory root, which we'll also get to later on in this season, which is another really good coffee root supplement as opposed to...
Is that one better? I've never had that.
It has more like chocolatey notes to it. So in my opinion, it resembles coffee a little bit more, and I think it's more complimentary. But back to Dandelion, the root, you can roast it. So you peel it, you roast it, and then you chop it up in like in a grinder, and then you brew it like coffee. And that's one way you can use the root there. But there's another way you can eat the roots fresh, and you steam them. And that actually makes the skin of the surface of the root really easy to peel off. So you can get that off of there and continue cooking like you normally would. And they're actually pretty cooked there. I think you steam them for like 10 minutes, and it should be easy to peel. And then you saute them you treat them like carrots, essentially.
Sure.
And they taste pretty comparable.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I just had a bunch of carrots last night, and I would love to try that with dandelions.
Yeah.
Just roasted carrots are so delicious.
Yep.
And it's just, I feel like dandelions could lend themselves well to that.
I agree. Yeah, carrots are one of my favorite, just regular vegetables.
For sure.
So all right, we're now that we've finished describing the entire plant to you, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we'll come back and we'll talk more about different ways you want to utilize this plant, its nutritional value, and yeah, we'll be back. Thank you. Wowie wow! We've got a new hot sauce for you.
It's so delicious.
It's spicy.
It's spicier for sure.
Spicier. It's called Harvest Moon, made with ghost peppers, American persimmons,
and spice bush berry.
It's gonna be great. We also have t-shirts available. Brand new t-shirts.
The best t-shirts, I think.
Baseball tees.
Scrumpers United.
If you've collected apples, if you've collected fruit,
welcome to the club.
Welcome to a club. You're a scrumper. So check out our merch store, wildedibleworldpod.myshopify.com. Wowie wow!
Sigh.
What's wrong, buddy?
Well, I just realized this mushroom supplement I bought isn't actually made with mushrooms. It's made with something called myceliated grain?
Myceliated grain?
Oh, no!
I'm sorry to tell you, buddy, but myceliated grain is a sure sign of a poor quality mushroom supplement.
Well, dang. I wanted mushrooms, not brown rice. What should I do?
Well, you should support a small batch producer from right here in the Midwest, Keweenaw Apothecary.
Keweenaw Apothecary? Tell me more.
Keweenaw Apothecary specializes in high-quality mushroom extracts from Michigan, and they always use real mushrooms, never myceliated grain.
That sounds like exactly what I've been looking for. Where can I order?
Well, you can find them at keweenawapothecary.etsy.com. That's KEWEENAW apothecary.etsy.com. Be sure to read their many excellent reviews.
Thanks, buddy. I don't want no low-quality mushroom products from a factory. I want Keweenaw Apothecary.
Wowie wow! And we're back. Thanks for putting up with the ads. So let's get on to some of the some more of the anecdotal edible stuff regarding this plant and some of its nutritional and medical qualities. So in general, the plant is high in vitamins A, C, E, K, and also calcium. It's got really good amounts of calcium in it, actually, for vegans or vegetarians out there. But yeah, what about the percentages of the nutritional?
Yeah, just to break it down from a nutritional standpoint, just very simply, per 100 grams or 3.5 ounces of dandelions, which is about 45 calories, you're dealing with 86% water, 9% carbohydrates, 3% protein, and this is my biggest shock, 1% fat.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Actually, not an insignificant source of natural fat.
Yeah,
that's
and then
really cool.
Without getting too granular into it, just phytochemicals in abundance.
Nice.
Yeah, so we won't get too into those names, but yeah, it's super nutritious.
Yeah, and you can even so again we were mentioning earlier the whole plant is raw, and what we didn't mention earlier was also the seed heads are raw. So even whenever they go to those poofy flower heads that you can just blow on and send the seeds across everybody's lawns to perpetuate this plant, you can eat those too. You don't necessarily want to eat the floaty, the more wispy part, but the seed at the very bottom of it that's actually connected to the head. You can just nibble that off. There's other ways to get it off, but honestly, I just love grabbing a handful and just like biting off the seeds. It's a nice like little crunchy little bit. But some math here on the seeds there and why this plant has been able to propagate across the entire planet. You have about 15,000 seeds per plant. Every single plant produces in its lifetime around 15,000 seeds. That means around 200 seeds per flower because each plant can grow up to about 10 flower heads, which is just an insane amount of seeds and does not seem like an insignificant amount of nutrition were things to come to that. And another reason why this was grown as a food plant. I mean, you have 15,000 plants from one plant, like potentially.
Yeah,
I mean,
potentially.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and that just goes to show, I mean, you said we talked about a food crop for us because the whole plant's edible, but those seeds that you talk about are huge parts of like certain birds' nutritional intake.
Absolutely.
And, it supports lots of folks and
a
entities.
lot of the ecology. Yeah. So a couple different alternative plants, alternative names that we came up with for this plant. Not we came up with, but we came across. Sorry. There's the Dandelion, which is the lion's teeth. You came across an interesting one. So.
Yeah. So I guess in England they call it pissabed. And this is because of the diuretic properties of the roots in specific.
Okay. So be careful with that dandelion root coffee. It might make the plant true to its English name, which is I've never heard that.
Yeah,
before.
That was the new one for me too. I love it.
So that's pretty interesting. Pissabed. Okay. So and we already talked about it, some of the ways that you can use this plant. But I just want to go into a little bit more of the specifics on like what you need to do to roast the root. But basically, you can just put your oven on at its normal standard, like when you turn it on, 350 degrees. And then you pretty much just roast it till it's crispy. That usually ends up being about 30, 45 minutes. But that's how you roast the root for dandelion coffee, and then you grind it up in your typical coffee grinder if you have one. Or mortar and pestle if you're old school.
Heck yeah. We also have the flowers that I've seen you specifically make into a dandelion wine.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something I've yet to try.
It's delicious, actually. Really underrated drink. From such a common plant. It brings really nice tones to it and can stay pretty sweet.
Yeah, and you can use that same flower to infuse into honey or vinegars or things like that. I have to think it would make probably a pretty great salad dressing. Maybe a little bit of some sort of vinegar. I have just a ton at home, and then maybe a little bit of mustard, a little olive oil, salt and pepper. I might do that tonight. Actually,
preach, dude. Yes, that's speaking my language. Earlier this year I collected a ton of dandelion heads and then dried them for tea because they also make a really, really good tea.
Heck yeah.
Beyond that, the stalk, sometimes you can experience some like bitter tones whenever you're eating this plant raw, and a lot of the times cooking will help subdue that. Sometimes in different plants it can make it stronger, so sometimes it depends. But dandelions, you definitely want to collect it from earlier on in the spring. You'll actually get a little bit more sweetness to bitterness, and also shaded areas. So what you taste in the bitterness is a lot of the nutrition and vitamins that it brings to the table. So whenever you pick a plant that's in full sun, you're actually getting a plant that's you're gonna find it's more bitter, and that might mean it has more of those minerals and nutrients that you want. But a lot of us eat for palatability, and so if you're looking for the best tasting plant, you should aim for younger species earlier on in the year if possible, or earlier on in its life cycle, because I think dandelions complete they spread their seeds, and then some of those seeds grow within the warm season.
Oh, absolutely.
So they kind of sprout up throughout the entire year. So earlier on in the life cycle, and in shaded areas are best.
Yeah, and then the adverse, if what you're looking for is a little bit of bitterness that you can treat and then maybe put in contrast to something, with a lot of, like BLT, dandelion sandwich sounds
yeah,
lovely.
Things where you would look for arugula, because,
Sure,
arugula is a little bitter, but yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I wonder if I could sell the Argonaut on that. Like, hey, let's bring some dandelion greens in and throw it on one of our lobster rolls.
Yeah, why not? It's basically a supermarket greens. Now, you go to Whole Foods and they sell that stuff for $12 a pound or whatever, which is just insane.
Yeah.
But I think, the world is kind of coming around full circle on appreciating this really ubiquitous plant that everybody has access to. It grows in between the sidewalk cracks. You can't stop the thing.
Yeah. It's awesome.
It's a planet conqueror, and that's honestly exactly what it's done. So that brings us to the end of our episode, and we just hope this brings a little bit of sunshine into your perspective regarding this super underutilized plant. And we just want to have a few last things to say. I want to say always be triple sure, that you have the right ID on your plant before you feed anybody you love, and that should always include yourself.
And if you love dandelions as much as we love dandelions and you want to share any of that info with us, whether it's a recipe or even something that we may have missed or even just a little tidbit that you want to share with the community, you can comment on Instagram, and you can also find us at Wild Edible World on Discord. And we'll see you guys soon.
Yep. Thanks for listening. See you next episode.
Bye.
Bye.